The Sri Lankan Navy is the navy of the Sri Lanka Armed Forces and is classed as the most vital defence force of Sri Lanka due to the country's island geography. It is responsible for the maritime defence of the Sri Lankan nation and its interests. Sri Lanka, situated in the middle of major sea lanes passing through the Indian Ocean, was always a magnet for seafarers and has a long history of naval campaigns. The current Sri Lankan Navy was established on 9 December 1950 when the Navy Act was passed for the formation of the Royal Ceylon Navy. The roots of the modern Sri Lankan Navy date back to 1937 when the Ceylon Naval Volunteer Force was established, which was renamed and absorbed into the Royal Navy as the Ceylon Royal Naval Volunteer Reserve during World War II. The current name Sri Lanka Navy was constituted in 1972 when Sri Lanka became a republic and the introduction of new constitution. In recent years it has played a key role in the Sri Lankan Civil War, conducting surveillance and patrol, amphibious and supply operations. During the war, the Navy moved from a small force focused on coastal patrols to a large combat force concentrating on asymmetric naval warfare capable of amphibious and land operations in support of counter-insurgency operation that progressed into engagements of a new form of littoral zone warfare. It carried out expeditionary deployments in the Indian Ocean in order to intercept rogue arms shipments on the high seas. The Navy has its own elite Special Forces unit, the Special Boat Squadron. The professional head of the Navy is the Commander of the Navy, currently Vice Admiral Ravindra Wijegaratne. The Commander-in-Chief of the Sri Lankan Armed Forces is the President of Sri Lanka, who heads the National Security Council through the Ministry of Defence, which is the highest level of military command and procurement for the armed forces. Operations of the Sri Lanka Navy are coordinated with the other armed forces by the Joint Operations Command. The Sri Lanka Navy has 4 patrol boats, 2 missile boats, 12 patrol boats, more than 35 fast attack craft, 6 landing ships, craft and a large number of littoral craft, along with 6 auxiliary vessels. Its personnel number 48,000, of whom approximately 15,000 are deployed for shore duties. The role of the Sri Lanka Navy is to conduct operations at sea for the defence of the nation, its interests, and conduct prompt and sustainable combat operations at sea in accordance with the national policies. History. The beginning in World War II. In January 1938 the Ceylon Naval Volunteer Force was created with Commander W. G. Beecham as commanding officer under Ordnance No. IV 1937. On 31 August 1939, at the outset of World War II, the CNVF was mobilized for war duties. 3 years later, the CNVF was offered to and accepted by the Royal Navy as a volunteer reserve, the Ceylon Royal Naval Volunteer Reserve. It continued under Royal Navy operational and administrative command until March 1946. With the end of the war, it reverted to Ceylon government control, though yet CRNVR in name. In the 1939 to 1946 period, the CRNVR carried out several operational duties, mainly at sea, cutting its teeth on the port-commissioned tugs Samson and Goliath. It later manned and operated trawlers and Antarctic whalers converted as minesweepers and fitted out with guns, submarine detection equipment and anti-submarine weaponry. They were the HMS Overdale Wyke, HMS Okapi, HMS Semler, HMS Samper, HMS Hogsa, HMS Bolter and HM tugs Barnett and C-405. In addition, the CRNVR manned several motor fishing vessels, harbor defense motor launch and miscellaneous auxiliary vessels. All were manned exclusively by CRNVR personnel. These ships were meant to sweep and guard the approaches to the harbors, but were often used on extended missions outside Ceylon waters. In the course of these operations, the ships came under enemy fire, recovered essential information from Imperial Japanese aircraft that were shot down, sailed to Aqaba after the Burma front was opened in 2 FMVs for harbor duties, and were called upon to accept the surrender of the Italian sloop Eritrea and escort her to the Colombo port with a prize crew on board. Royal Ceylon Navy. After independence from British rule in 1948, the government believed an island country should possess a strong navy to be its first line of defense. Therefore, on the 9th of December 1950, the Royal Ceylon Navy was created, with Ceylon Royal Naval Volunteer Reserve forming the nucleus. The first warship was commissioned HMCYS Vijay, an Algerian-class minesweeper, ex-HMS Flying Fish, along with other patrol boats and tugs. Later the fleet was expanded with HMCYS Parakram, another Algerian-class minesweeper, 2 Canadian-built River-class frigates HMCYS Matasina, HMCYS Gajabahu, an ocean-going tug. During this time the Navy took part in several joint naval exercises and a goodwill mission to the Far East. However, the expansion of the Navy was dramatically halted when the captain of the Navy, who was relieved of command at the time, was implicated in the 1962 Ceylonese coup d'etat attempt. The Navy suffered a great deal as a result of the government's retribution that followed, with several of its ships sold off, reduced its size by stoppage of recruitment of officers, cadets and sailors for over 7 years, the loss of important bases and barracks, and the stoppage of training in England. As a result, in 1971 the Navy was poorly equipped and short of personnel when the 1971 JVP insurrection broke out. SLN was not capable of putting ships to sea due to a lack of seagoing units, and the Navy being called to mount shore duty initially to defend ports, and thereafter offensive combat operations against the insurgents. During the insurrection, Navy suffered its first combat casualties, went on to man detention centers to rehabilitate surrendered insurgents after it was crushed in a few months. Sri Lanka, however, had to rely on the Indian Navy to establish an exclusion zone around the island. Navy of the Republic in 1972. The Dominion of Ceylon became the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka, and the Royal Ceylon Navy became the Sri Lanka Navy. The ensign, along with the flag officers' flags, were redesigned. The term Captain of the Navy, introduced in the Navy Act, was changed to Commander of the Navy, in keeping with the terminology adopted by the other 2 services. Finally, Her Majesty's Ceylon ships became Sri Lankan naval ships. Based on its experiences in the late 1970s, the Navy began rebuilding its strength with the gift of Shershon-class torpedo boats from the USSR and acquisition of Type 062 class gunboats from China to carry out effective coastal patrolling, and carried out several cruises to regional ports. New bases were established to counter smuggling operations in the coastal areas. Civil War. At the beginning of the Civil War in the 1980s, the Navy found itself poorly equipped to face the new threats the LTTE created, but this was soon overcome by increasing the fleet of patrol boats and the introduction of fast attack crafts. These proved highly successful in limiting the LTTE's use of the seas. The weapon systems on these were upgraded with time as the Sea Tigers resorted to using sophisticated suicide crafts against naval crafts. In addition, 2 locally built Jayu Sagara-class offshore patrol craft were added to the fleet to carry out anti-smuggling operations and coastal surveillance. During this time, the Navy took took part in its first amphibious operation in its history. The size of the force along with the fleet increased in the years of war. In the early 80s, a land combat force was created, which at first limited itself to base defense, and as its numbers increased took part in offensive operations against the LTTE along with the Sri Lankan Army. An elite naval special forces unit called the Special Boat Squadron was created in the late 80s based on the British Special Boat Service. In early 1990s, the SLN carried out, in junction with the Army, its first amphibious operation, codenamed Operation Sea Breeze, followed by the larger Operation Balavega Yar a year later, and on the seas it began an aggressive clampdown on LTTE actives, including gun running. It was during this time in 1992 Admiral W.E. Clancy Fernando, the commander of the Navy, was assassinated by a suicide bomb attack by the LTTE. During the late part of the 1990s, the Navy expanded its fleet of patrol boats to counter Sea Tiger crafts and intercept arms shipments destined for the Tigers within Sri Lankan territorial waters. In 2000, the Navy started a fleet air arm by acquiring a HAL Chetak from India to expand its surveillance capability by operating from newly acquired offshore patrol vessels. During the same time, conventional warfare capability was increased by the addition of missile boats. Following the resumptions of hostilities between the government of Sri Lanka and the LTTE since early 2006, the Navy took up an active role in limiting the LTTE's use of the seas. This resulted in several major sea battles occurring the course of 2006, 2007 and 2009. Most significant of the events during this time were the interception and sinking of several large cargo ships that were bringing illegal arms shipments to the LTTE in the Indian Ocean in international waters. These naval operations have proven the blue water capability of the Sri Lankan Navy. During the war, the Navy, along with the Army, developed its own weapons development programs to produce and maintain weapon systems suited for indigenous requirements in collaboration with Colombo Dockyard. Major combat operations. Apart from continued deployments at sea, the Navy has played a significant role in supporting all major operations carried out by the Army, including several amphibious operations. Post-war, with the end of the Civil War, the Navy has begun reorienting itself for the future defense of the island. This has led to force redeployment, training exercises and transfer of certain duties to the newly formed Sri Lanka Coast Guard. In the post-war years, the Navy has expanded its maritime operations to fisheries control and counter human trafficking. Operations to counter illegal poaching by Tamil Nadu fishermen have led to allegations that personnel from the Sri Lanka Navy have attacked more than 12 fishermen, 2 of whom have died in a series of disputes. Australia gave 2 Bay-class patrol boats to the Sri Lanka Navy during its Prime Minister's visit to the island for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in November 2013. The first of these vessels was delivered in April 2014. Sri Lanka has ordered 2 OPVs from India and they are under construction in the Goa shipyard. Japan has offered Sri Lanka patrol ships to help improve sea lane security in the Indian Ocean, where tankers transporting oil from the Middle East to Japan travel. Organization. Naval Headquarters. The professional head of the Navy is the Commander of the Navy, at present Vice Admiral Ravindra Wijegaratne, and reports directly to the Minister of Defense. The Commander of the Navy exercises operational and administrative control of the Navy from Naval Headquarters in SLNS Parakrama, Colombo. He is assisted by the Chief of Staff, who along with Directors General and Directors comprise the Board of Management and Board of Directors of the Sri Lanka Navy. Board of Management. The Board of Management consists of the 5 Directors General, who are of Rear Admiral grade on appointment. Director General DG. 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 Commands. The Navy has 7 commands known as Naval Area Commands, each under the control of a flag officer for effective command and administrative control. This is in order to efficiently maintain all ships, crafts and vehicles, and to ensure the operational readiness of commands and units. Each area shall have its own harbor, base, repair and refitting facilities, signal centers, logistics, civil engineering and medical facilities. 7 Naval Area Commands. Northern Naval Area, North Central Naval Area, Northwestern Naval Area, Western Naval Area, Southern Naval Area, Eastern Naval Area, Southeastern Naval Area. Units: 3rd Fast Gunboat Squadron, 4th Fast Attack Flotilla, 7th Surveillance Command Squadron, Special Boat Squadron, Rapid Action Boat Squadron. Branches. Sri Lanka Navy consists following branches to which personnel are attached to: Executive Branch, Navigation and Direction, Communications, Gunnery, Missiles, Anti-Submarine Warfare, Diving, Hydrography, Engineering Branch, Medical Branch, Logistics Branch, Electrical and Electronics Engineering Branch, Naval Patrolman Branch, Information Technology Branch, Musical Branch, Legal Branch, Provost Branch. Current deployments. As of present, most of the Sri Lankan Navy is deployed for domestic defense with the end of combat operations, while foreign deployments are carried out from time to time. Domestic. Due to the Sri Lankan Civil War, the Navy has been on a constant mobilized state since the 1980s. The majority of the naval units, both at sea and ground-based, are deployed in the north and eastern provinces of the country, as well as in other parts of the country. The security of all major ports of the country is the responsibility of the Navy, due to terrorist activity. Foreign. Haiti. Since 2004, Navy personnel have been attached to the Sri Lankan contingent of the United Nations Stabilization Mission in Haiti, Indian Ocean. In 2007 and 2008, the Navy carried out anti-arms smuggling operations in international waters in the Indian Ocean, sinking 6 rogue merchant ships smuggling arms for the LTTE. Training. General Sir John Kotalawala Defence University, formed in 1981 and situated in Ratmalana, 14 kilometers south of Colombo, is Sri Lanka's only university specializing in defence studies. Apart from postgraduate defence studies each year, approximately 50 cadets from all 3 services are admitted to the university to participate in a 3-year program of undergraduate studies. Senior officers of the ranks of Lieutenant Commander and Commander are given advanced training and education at the Defence Services Command and Staff College at Batalanda, Makola, which was established in 1997 as the Army Command and Staff College. In addition, KDU conducts Masters of Science degree for the senior officers of Sri Lanka Navy. Basic officer training is carried out at the Naval and Maritime Academy at the SLN Dockyard in Trincomalee, and short, specialized officer training is conducted at the SLNS Jamunu, Welisara. This training includes theoretical aspects covered at the Training Institute, followed by a practical exposure on board the Sri Lanka Navy fleet at sea. Basic training for new recruits are conducted at Advanced Naval Training Center, SLNS Nipuna Naval Artificer Training Institute, SLNS Thakshla, Welisara, and at Naval Recruit Training Centers at several shore establishments. This basic training training will be followed by on-the-job training on board fleet units and at shore establishments. Combat Training School at SLNS Pandukabaya conducts combat training for naval patrolmen. Additional training is carried out in UK, India, Pakistan, Australia. Main training establishments: Naval and AMP, Maritime Academy, SLN Dockyard, Advanced Naval Training Center, SLNS Nipuna, Naval Artificer Training Institute, SLNS Thakshala, Naval Recruit Training Center, SLNS Shiksha, Naval Recruit Training Center, Combat Training School, SLNS Pandukabaya. Current fleet. The Sri Lankan naval fleet consists of above 50 combat support ships and inshore patrol craft, with most originating from China, India, Israel and Sri Lanka. Offshore patrol vessels. The offshore patrol vessels are the largest warships of the Sri Lankan Navy. There are 4 OPVs in service of the SLN, SLNS Ayura, SLNS Samudra, SLNS Sagara, with all capable of operating naval helicopters, and another the locally built SLNS Jayu Sagara. These ships are deployed in the high seas to carry out surveillance and interception of illegal arms smuggling and to monitor naval activity within the EEZ. Fast missile vessels. The fast missile vessels were added to the SLN in 2001 when 2 Israeli Sa-4 class missile boats were acquired. These vessels, which are referred to as the Nandi Mithra class and are equipped with Gabriel 2 anti-ship missiles, increased the SLN's conventional warfare capability and provide a multi-role platform for different operations undertaken by the Navy. Fast gunboats. Fast gunboats carry out multi-role missions from coastal patrols to shore bombardment in support of amphibious operations. FGBs consist of ships from the Chinese Lashan class, Haijui class and Shanghai II class. Patrol boats. Bay-class patrol boats are the latest type of craft to be added to the fleet. They were given to Sri Lanka by the Australian government in 2013, to help the Sri Lanka Navy's efforts to reduce smuggling and other illegal trafficking. The first of these was delivered in April 2014. They commissioned in July 2014 as SLNS Rathnadipa and SLNS Mihikatha. Fast attack craft. Fast attack craft have proven to be the workhorse of the SLN in combating asymmetric warfare of the Sea Tigers of the LTTE in the coastal waters of northern and eastern parts of the island during the Civil War. Attached to the 4th Fast Attack Flotilla, these boats are about 25 meters in length, around 50 tons displacement, able to reach speeds of 45 knots and armed with rapid-fire weapons. They were primarily deployed in offensive operations for the denial of sea. They were also used for defensive operations to prevent Sea Tiger suicide craft from attacking both naval and civilian ships by operating as escorts. There are several classes of FACs in SL Navy. Super Devora Mk3, Super Devora Mk2, Devora Mki, Shaldag class, Colombo class. Inshore patrol craft. Inshore patrol craft are small vessels which are capable of operating inshore as well as for beaching. They are capable of speeds in excess of 30 knots and are used for small boat operations, harbor defense and amphibious operations. Littoral attack craft. Littoral warfare craft are small and highly maneuverable Arrow-class attack speedboats. They also have a high degree of firepower for vessels the size. Introduced in 2006, these boats are manufactured by the SLN's own boatyard and used by the Elite Special Boat Squadron and the Rapid Action Boat Squadron for small boat operations. Amphibious warfare vessels. The SLN has several vessels to support amphibious operations it carries out. These include U-High-class tank landing ship SLNS Shadi, 29M utility landing crafts, Yunnan-class mechanized landing crafts and an ABS M10. Utility craft air cushion. Auxiliary vessels. The Navy also has several auxiliary vessels such as fast personnel carriers and replenishment ships. Fast personnel carriers are catamarans which were used for both troop and civilian transport, running the gauntlet of LTTE suicide craft. SLN's fleet of non-commissioned underway replenishment ships have been used recently for replenishment at sea in international waters. Equipment: Gabriel anti-ship missile, Typhoon naval optronic stabilized weapon platforms, M242 Bushmaster 25mm chain-fed autocannon, Fleet Air Arm, with offshore patrol vessels in its fleet since 2001, when SLN Sayura was commissioned. The Navy has been considering the development of a Fleet Air Arm to operate from these vessels. Two types of helicopters are being tested for this role: Halchatic, HH-65 Dolphin. Special Forces. The Navy has its own elite Special Forces unit, the Special Boat Squadron. Established in the 1980s, SBS was modeled after the Special Boat Service of the Royal Navy. It has roles in naval special operations such as amphibious raids, maritime counter-terrorism, reconnaissance and target indication, combat swimmer missions and small boat operations. As a Special Forces unit, its role is not limited to waterborne operations. It also conducts operations on land, either with ground combat units of the Navy and the Army, or separately. Naval Patrolmen, a branch formed recently to augment the land combat capabilities of SLN. Effectively, members of this branch are soldiers of the Navy performing the role of naval infantry, originally limited to base and harbor security. In recent years, naval patrolmen have taken part in offensive and defensive operations against the LTTE in conjunction with the Army or independently, as both infantry and light armored units. Provost Branch. The Naval Provost Branch of the Sri Lankan Navy is entrusted with the responsibility of maintaining discipline and enforcement of law and order among the naval personnel by way of prevention of crimes, detection of crimes, apprehension of offenders, conducting preliminary investigations for necessary disciplinary action and providing assistance to all naval authorities on all disciplinary and other connected matters. Personnel. Paramawira Vibhushan recipients. The Paramawira Vibhushan is the highest award for valor awarded in the Sri Lankan Armed Forces. Navy recipients include Lieutenant Commander Jude Lakmal Wijathunga, Chief Petty Officer K.G. Shantha. Notable fallen members. Over 23,790 Sri Lankan Armed Forces personnel were killed since begin of the Civil War in 1981 to its end in 2009. This includes 2 admirals killed in active duty or assassinated. 659 service personnel were killed due to the Second JVP insurrection from 1987 to 1990. 53 service personnel were killed and 323 were wounded in the First JVP insurrection from 1971 to 1972. Notable fallen members includes Admiral W. E. Clancy Fernando, Commander of the Navy; Rear Admiral Mohan Jayamaha, Commander Northern Naval Area. Women in the Sri Lanka Navy. Today women are recruited to both the regular and volunteer forces. Although at first limited to the medical branch, currently both lady officers and female rates are able to join any branch of service including the executive branch as well. In 2007 the Navy appointed its first ever lady Commodore, Surgeon Commodore Indrani Y. Amarasinghe.